Good morning. Good morning. This is not something my ego is interested in touching. I'm very nervous about what's going to come out of my mouth. I'm being completely honest with you. I literally sat here after I wrote the title like this. Like, is this really something I'm going to talk about? Am I even a person to be speaking on this? So let me preface this by saying a couple of things. I'm not a social justice warrior. This is not, good morning. This is not me giving a prescription or answers. This is actually me asking lots of questions. So this is really actually me letting you in on my process this morning. So do not think I'm going to come here and give you solutions, because I don't have any. I'll start with saying I grew up just to give you some background, I grew up in the Nation of Islam during the 80s when the teachings were very, very clear. It's changed over the years. It's a little different now. I grew up in a very pro-Black household. My parents would probably have been considered social justice warriors. They were out at protests and all of the things. Having children slowed that down, as it often does. Went to an all-Black school as a child before being bussed out into an Italian neighborhood for school, which was a very different experience. So I've spent my personal life flowing in and out of spaces that were all Black and that were all white, and learning how to kind of navigate both. Sometimes feeling like I didn't fit into the Black category because my parents weren't into like the mainstream things. So sometimes that was a challenge of whatever the mainstream culture seemed to be. And then not feeling like I fit into the white side of culture because I was Black. And that was that. So that's just so you have a general background of the variety of perspective that I have. I love being Black and I love being in my Black skin, my brown skin. Like, I love my melanin. I love everything about it. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I love Black men. It's always my preference. You know, them's my dudes. As I grow and expand, more questions start to come to my mind, and I'm simply posing them to you all, these same questions that I have had, in the hopes that either we have some dialogue or y'all maybe give me some answers. How about that? Maybe that's what this is about. This is such a hot topic. Damn, why so many of y'all watching today? This is not the day for people to be watching my live. I'm finding it disheartening, the divide that exists between Black and white women. I'm finding it disheartening because many of our experiences have been the same in different ways. And the reason why I'm being so cautious with this is because within the Black community, I know that we are still hurting and grieving from the atrocities that were done to our ancestors. And this is that's part of what eventually we're going to have to heal, is that grief. We're allowed it. We're allowed it. And that anger. And the grief and anger that ancestrally we feel toward white women for not being there in some ways. Like, can you, because white women, I'm not white, so, you know, white women have had their own like shit to deal with too, you know? And so have Asian women and Native American women, like all of us have had, and it's not, and I'm not blaming, this is not a blame man thing. I'm saying we have all had our shit to deal with. And this morning I was thinking what it must have been like to be a Black woman in bondage, to have your child, nice, thanks, Chuck, to have your child ripped out of your arms, and the person who ripped it away was another woman. This white woman who, could she not understand how you love your children like she loves hers? Could she not understand your pain and grief? Aren't you the same? How could she do this to you? How could she watch your child be beaten? How could she watch your daughter or your son be raped? How could she do that and do nothing? And Black women carry that with us, and it is part of our mistrust and anger toward white women. How could you stand by? Now that's the ancestral piece of that. Unfortunately, in current times, there are still fractions of white women who would still do that. Those are the Karens of the world, which perpetuate the idea that white women cannot be trusted by Black women, that at any chance, any turn for self-preservation, your white sister will turn on you in a minute. There's no right or wrong here, and I'm not judging this. I'm stating feelings, right? Because if you're gonna be eventually in relationship with anyone, the parameters don't change for relationship, right? The same things that happen between a man and a woman in a romantic relationship are the same principles of any relationship. So if you were going to be in any relationship with someone, you would need to know that you could trust them. You would need to know that you couldn't be in a relationship with someone where there was a sense of betrayal. Right? So the principles don't change. We think that if we're in love with someone over here, it's like a different set. And then if we're in friendship or anything else, it's a different set. It's not. And that's part of the problem. It's the same thing. So this is part of the issue. And it's a real one. I have had the interesting privilege, as though Black people can't use that word, of having teachers who have guided me in miraculous ways, some Black, some white, because I connected with these teachers on a soul level, on a level beyond what is seen. Eventually, my hope is that we live in a world, it's not a Martin Luther King thing. Eventually, my hope is that we live in a world where people connect from here. Because we all know that genetically there's the difference between this and this is literally like genetically, the difference is like point. It's not even like it's like a 5% difference. And I'm personally not sure how to bridge this divide, or should it even be? But at what point do we work over here and do we work over here and eventually meet somewhere in the middle? I don't have answers for that. What I can say is that I have flown in spaces where I have listened to Black women tell me stories of things that have happened in my life. And then I've flown in spaces of white women who've had the same story. And I'm sitting there listening, going, it's the same story. I've flown in spaces with Black women who have had money, and I've been in spaces with white women who were struggling to pay rent. Because I had a lot of, I grew up thinking everybody white had money. Like I watched TV and everybody white had a house. There were no Black people on TV. So in my mind, how the media shaped my mind, and then I went to a private school with a bunch of wealthy white, in my mind, all white people had money. I didn't know that there were any like poor white people growing up. I wasn't exposed to it. I didn't know. There's a white woman in Alabama right now. She's probably living in a trailer park, trying to figure out how she's going to feed her kids. There's a Black woman in New York City trying to figure out how she's going to feed her kids. I'm not negating the systems that exist, because they do. If my frustration is anything, it's that if women could come together, the systems would no longer exist. Maybe that's my frustration. My frustration is that I know that there are some women who benefit from these systems who will never give them up. I know that. Those are the same women who would rip the baby from the woman in bondage's arms. Self-preservation is first. So I know that there are white women out there who prefer the system that's in place because it's designed to help keep them safe and comfortable and irresponsible. They don't have to worry about anything. They can just go about their lives. And because of that, Black women and other melanated women have to have a harder road in some ways. I have sons. Most white mothers will never understand the the fears that sometimes go through my mind with my sons being out in the world. It's just not something they've had to experience. It's not something they can relate to. And even while many are beginning to understand that there are systems in place, I know that unfortunately, far too many of them, if they saw my sons and didn't know them and didn't know that they were my sons, would feel a little sense of fear. That hurts me. Because they're women who are probably my friends, who like me. And if they saw my sons, yes. But because of the conditioning that we've all had, if they didn't know those were mine, it would be a little different. I'm not saying they call the cops on them, but they definitely like, you know. And I don't have answers here. The one thing that I do know is that the world that we're living in will not shift until we as women begin to come together and shift it. That is the truth that I know, that I feel in my body. Until we understand that we are sharing similar experiences. I mean, yes, you know, in this particular country, Black people have gone through some hell and some fuckery and some shit. Let me be very clear. There are atrocities that happen to the women in this country that are affecting the womb space of women today that have been horrendous. And we cannot go back. Like, we can't fix it. And that's part of what we have to grieve as Black women. We can't fix it. We can start from here. We can't go back there. We have to say that shit happened, and we have to like, okay, now what are we gonna do from here? How are we gonna build and heal from here? Because we still carry that anger. Understandably so. But at what point are we going to honor our ancestors and their pain and their journey and let that go? And let it go. Because there isn't anything we can do about the past. But if we keep trying to carry that with us, it's going to hinder our future. And that does not mean forget, right? Like we come to these absolutes. We don't have to carry the baggage of their pain, but we can honor the lineage of their memory. And then there's festivity because we don't have our lineage. Like, and you know what? Here's the truth. There are a lot of white people that don't have their lineage right now either. Obviously not for the same reasons. I mean, they're just American. They don't even know where they came from. Now, I believe in past life stuff and parallel life stuff. Some of y'all might not. I've been other races in other lives. I'm not shocked by that. I was first drawn to the Celtic pantheon and I felt a way about that because I was like, why am I liking Irish goddesses and gods? I am not, well, I mean, my great grandfather is Irish, but still, I'm like, I'm Black. Like, come on, like, how come I'm not like going toward like, you know, West Africa or South Africa? Like, why am I drawn here first? I felt a way. And that sometimes needs to be taken into account because we will come across people who are different whatevers. And it's like, because they're feeding off of a past life where they were either white or Black or Native American, but I believe in that stuff. Maybe you don't. So in Irish and Scottish cultures, and really, I'm sorry, I think I'm just biased. I don't really like the English too much. I feel like the English, even in Europe, are like, because in Irish and Scottish cultures, there was such a rich, robust uh, um, respect for all life. First of all, there was no racism back then, right? Like the Moors traveled, it wasn't a thing. Irish had their own like beautiful customs and ways of connecting with source and spirit. I was a witch there once upon a time. And and just and all these beautiful just ways of connecting that have been lost, by the way, for many of them here. At one time, the women of all of the cultures had ritual for childbirth, for marriage, for raising children. We all had that wherever we were. And maybe it's my hope that we get back to that way of being. I said yesterday, I love Star Trek. You know, I love the world of the Federation. It happened after nuclear war and alien invasion. And I'm hoping that that doesn't have to happen for us as women to understand that in 2021, the things that we have in common are beginning to outweigh the things that we don't. And that while our history in this country fucking sucks, and this land was built on the blood and backs of people who did not ask to come here and be put through that, that we can take those lessons and begin to build something new. So that when Becky and Karen see my sons, they don't think twice. And that Karen no longer becomes a thing. Shout out to the Karens out there who've had to deal with so much shit, you know, because your name is Karen and you're white and you're like, that's not fucking me. Poor things. Hey, talk to your sisters, you know? And white women, y'all need to start checking yourselves, like for real. Like y'all need to start checking yourselves, seriously. I didn't mean to cry in here this morning. You all need to get together and maybe create some spaces where you can deal with the pain that, whatever your version of your pain is that you've had to deal with. Whatever feelings that have been left over. You know, I hesitate to tell this story. Oh, I need to get off soon. I hesitate to tell this story because I don't want Black people to think that I'm sympathizing with the enemy. And that's the thing. I think I was talking to my sons last night and talking about, and it was a new perspective for me. A white woman on a plantation. And the disdain she must have had for that Black woman that her husband continuously went after, consensual or not. You often not consensual, by the way. But she needed someone to blame, right? Because as women, when our man does something, we don't look at him. You see, these are universal, like I said. We look at the other woman. So in her mind, it doesn't matter that her husband's raping this woman. In her mind, her husband would rather sleep with the cattle, with the cow, with the horse, with the mule, because Black women were seen as animals. He would rather spend his time between that woman's legs than with her. and make these little babies and then try to bring those little babies into the house that she entertains in. And I'm not, again, this is not a man blame, but I just want women to understand and see, you know, white women, y'all might have some, I could see how down the generations, I could see how that could lead to a disdain, a dislike. Because here you are doing the things that society told you were supposed to do, right? I mean, because this is the societal construct. And yet and still, you can't get this man to be with you. So white women have work to do. Black women have work to do. I have no answers. But what I know is as I flow in these spaces where I hear stories from both women in this time, the stories are so much the same. And I sit and go, gosh, if each only heard the other, they would know that we have so much more in common. And can we find a way to trust each other so that we can change the systems that exist? Like, is that even possible? Is it just a dream? And in my mind, I hope that it's possible one day. Not because we're colorblind. That's just some stupid bullshit. I don't want to be colorblind. I want to see the richness of each of the individual expression of the divine that exists in all of us. This is like spiritual stuff. I know I'm not here I'm taking it up a notch, but I would like to see the divine in each one of us, because none of us are here by accident. And if that spark of divine exists in me, then it must exist in a woman in China, a woman in France, a woman in Kenya, Zimbabwe, Canada, Mexico, Argentina, Chile, Guatemala, Ireland. It must exist in those women. And if that exists in all of us, can we find a way to meet from that point and then have it spread out from there? Is that a possibility? Or is it more important to all of us to continue to hold on to everything that happened before? And that doesn't mean that the shit's not happening now. That's what I'm saying. Like, I know that shit's happening now. I'm very aware of what happened in 2020. I said, I grew up in the nation. I'm real clear on the shit that's happening. But I know that in order for it to shift, we're eventually gonna have to work together. Like the enemy of my enemy is my friend type of thing, if that'll make y'all feel better. And maybe the enemy isn't, it's, you know, maybe the enemy is classism. Because there are people who would prefer to keep wealth here and they don't care what happens to anyone underneath that, regardless of your color. Because they don't give a shit about the white people in Alabama either. They don't give a shit. They just keep feeding them that same tired story. Like, you're better because you could eventually be like us. You're not like them peoples over there. They keep telling them the same tired story. And yet Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, they be living poor. White folks be living poor. Like, black people in the North y'all don't even know what poor is. Appalachian folk. Come on. They don't care about y'all either. And maybe we need to come together from the soul purpose, from the divine. And I think that that's where I'm at. That's where my personal struggle is right now, this tightrope that I walk between growing spiritually, deepening into my connection to source energy, and how do I deepen and hold that connection and still see other people as other? How do I do that at the same time? Because it becomes difficult after a while. How do I feel in from divine source, honor my ancestors and my blackness without having this twinge of this weird sense of loyalty that might not fit being in alignment with source? And what's more important, my alignment with source energy or my loyalty to a group of people in this lifetime? And I don't, it's a tightrope that I think white people have not had to walk, and so maybe don't understand. And that's the difference. It's not something that white women, because that's the culture, you can be in full alignment with your spiritual self and not see anyone as other. That's definitely a key difference that Black women may have to navigate differently. So shout out to my teachers. My main teacher at this moment is Perry Chase, a white woman who was recommended to me by a Black woman, a very, shout out Janae, who, when she came to me and said, you should check out Perry Chase, and I went and looked at it, I was like, first of all, Janae's down with this chick, and who is she, and why is she directing me to this white woman? Perry embodies source energy beyond that, and she embodies truth beyond that. And so I was able to be in her frequency. Shout out to M. Rain of Magical Mystic. That's my magic mama, magic teacher. She black. She blackity black. But she embodies the same truth that Perry does. There's a thread of truth that runs through them that goes beyond. And interestingly enough, they work with folks of all hues because the thread of truth penetrates all of that. And Rain is where I get my candles and my oils, and she, you know, she's where I deepen into my sex magic and my spell work. So I love her. Shout out to Debbie Ward, my Tantra teacher. Debbie's black. Well, Debbie's half black, half white. And she also has a thread of truth through her and works with all hues of people, because people gravitate toward the truth of divinity. And so Debbie is she's who I'm learning how to deepen my sacred sexuality practice with. And so maybe that's why my perspective is the way it is, because I have women from different places who are directing me, who all share this same thread frequency that runs through them that goes beyond this. And they're doing it. And I'm like, if they can do it, can I do it? Can you do it? Can we go beyond that? Are we ready? Are you ready? You might not be. I don't know if I am. I still struggle with it. Black women come to me, they see me and they're like, ah, yes. Sometimes white women come to me and they're unsure. I don't know. Is she just for Black women? I don't know. Can you teach me? I don't know. Like they don't know. I am for everyone. I do love my Black sisters though, and understand that there aren't often spaces for us. But I am for everyone. So these are questions that I'm asking myself this morning. Maybe questions for you to ask yourself, or maybe you're like, fuck that, nah, man. Like if you're Black, you might be like, nope, can't hear it. And I get it. That like, I'm not even gonna be like, you should see, I get it. And if you're white, you might be like, I'm just not ready for that yet. It's cool. I'm not here to like push or shove anyone anyway. I'm just presenting questions. Because eventually, as women who are raising these babies, these beautiful children, who are going to create the next set of rules and laws and regulations in the world that we live in, I feel like eventually we're probably going to need to be kind of eating across from each other at some point, right? If we want to change what we see. That's it. Oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought. I will look at the comments. It's always a nerve-wracking thing to talk about stuff like this. That can be a really hot topic, and I hope that I did it in a way that honors. First of all, I hope I did it in a way where you understand what the fuck I was saying, and I hope I spoke in a way that honors as much as I can the pain and process of people, especially Black people. And I just hope that I was understood. That's my real hope. I hope that I was understood. All right. I love you all. And I'll see you back here tomorrow morning. Bye.